The morning had just begun to stretch its golden arms over the sleepy town. The sun was shy, half hidden behind a layer of mist that rolled lazily through the narrow streets of a small settlement at the edge of the city. The air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke, and the distant whistle of a train echoed faintly, a sound that always seemed to carry both dreams and goodbyes. In one of the crooked little lanes stood a small, time-worn house with flaking blue paint. Inside it lived Rehan, a man in his early 30s, thin, quiet, and always carrying his old black camera, a relic from the past that he treated like a sacred object. Rehan wasn't a famous photographer. He was just the photo guy of the neighborhood. People called him when they needed pictures of weddings, school events, or funerals. His lens had seen everything: joy, sorrow, laughter, tears, yet his own life remained painfully still. That morning, Rehan woke earlier than usual. The previous night had been restless. He had spent hours scrolling through old photos, trying to pick out the ones that might make a good portfolio. Maybe someday, he whispered to himself, someone will notice my work. He dreamed of being published in a magazine or maybe even having his own exhibition one day. But dreams, he knew, were expensive, and he could barely afford breakfast. After a small cup of bitter tea and a piece of stale bread, Rehan packed his worn-out backpack. Inside went his camera, 2 spare lenses, a ragged notebook full of ideas, and a half-empty bottle of water. He decided to go to the railway station, a place he often visited when he needed inspiration. The station was always alive, full of stories waiting to be caught by his camera. People leaving, people arriving, people crying, people hoping. Every emotion was there if one knew where to look. By 8 a.m., the sun had climbed higher, slicing through the morning haze. Rehan reached the station and sat on a wooden bench near Platform 2. Trains rumbled in and out. Vendors shouted about tea and biscuits, and children chased each other along the edge of the platform. Rehan lifted his camera and began clicking. Each shutter sound was like a heartbeat, precise, steady, alive. He captured an old man, reading a newspaper under the light of the station signboard. He caught the blur of a woman's red dupatta as she ran to catch her train. He framed a group of laborers laughing, their hands stained with grease and dust. Every shot had a soul in it, and that's what Rehan loved. He believed a good photograph wasn't about perfection, it was about emotion. Time passed quickly. Around 11 a.m., the crowd began to thin. Only a few passengers lingered on the benches. A faint breeze blew through the station, carrying with it the smell of coal and sweat. Rehan wiped his forehead, ready to pack up, when he noticed something unusual through his lens. Near the far end of the platform, where the shadows stretched longer, 2 men were arguing. At first, Rehan thought it was just a heated conversation, nothing worth attention. But then he saw one of them grab the other by the collar. His instincts as a photographer flared. He adjusted his focus and zoomed in. Click. He captured the tension. One man's face twisted in anger, the other's in fear. Click. He caught a hand reaching inside a coat pocket. Click. And then something glinted. The moment lasted barely a second. The man pulled out what looked like a knife, quick and sharp like a flash of lightning. Rehan froze. Before he could lower his camera, the blade had already moved. The second man stumbled backward, clutching his chest. A muffled scream escaped his lips as he fell between the benches, out of sight. Rehan's heart pounded. His hand trembled, the camera still pressed to his eye. He blinked, unsure if what he saw was real or just his imagination. When he looked again, the man with the knife was gone, vanished into the crowd like smoke. For a few seconds, Rehan couldn't move. His breath came in shallow bursts, and his palms were cold with sweat. Around him, life continued as usual. People boarding trains, vendors selling snacks, children laughing. No one else seemed to have noticed what had happened at the far end of the platform. It was as if the moment had existed only for him and his camera. He stood up slowly, his knees weak. Should he go there? Should he check what happened? His mind screamed no, but his feet took a hesitant step forward anyway. Halfway down the platform, he stopped. He could see a dark stain spreading across the concrete floor. Thick, unmistakable. His throat went dry. Rehan turned around and walked away quickly, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. He didn't stop until he was out of the station. Once outside, he leaned against a wall, gasping for breath. "What did I just see?" he whispered. "Was it a murder?" The rest of the day passed in a blur. He avoided people, ignored calls, and kept replaying the scene in his head. When he finally reached home, he locked the door and sat on the floor staring at his camera. The small black machine now felt heavy, like it carried a secret too big for him to hold. After several minutes, curiosity overpowered fear. Rehan switched on his old laptop and inserted the memory card. The screen flickered, loading the folder of images he had taken that morning. At first, everything looked normal. The old man, the children, the vendors. Then he reached the last few shots. His fingers trembled as he clicked next. There it was, and frame by frame. The argument, the raised hand, the knife, the fall. And in the very last photo, captured clearly in the lens, the face of the killer, half-shadowed but unmistakably real. Rehan's mouth went dry. He stared at the image, unable to look away. The man's cold eyes seemed to stare back through the screen, straight at him, as if warning him to stay silent. At that moment, Rehan realized something terrifying. He wasn't just a photographer anymore. He was the only witness, the silent witness, to a murder no one else had seen.